If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I promise this story will leave your jaw on the floor. My name is Eleanor Clark. I'm 67 years old, and 3 weeks ago I handed my son and his wife $13,000. They swore loan sharks were threatening Sophie's life over gambling debts. I believed them. I canceled my dream trip to Italy, the one my late husband Henry and I had planned for years, and gave them every penny of my savings. Tonight, I saw photos of them on a Mediterranean cruise, champagne in hand, living it up on the very money they said would save Sophie's life. I nearly dropped my phone. The rage was so sharp it made my hands shake. My son, Daniel, hadn't returned my calls in days. Sophie had ignored my messages completely. But there she was online, parading in designer bikinis, hashtagging #IBlessedLife, while I sat alone in Portland with an empty bank account. The betrayal sliced deep. I believed every word of their story. The threats, the panic, Daniel's trembling voice on the phone. I'd wired the money within an hour, telling myself family comes first. But staring at those photos, I knew I'd been conned. That's when my doorbell rang. It was Ruth, my best friend since teaching days, holding a bottle of wine and wearing that sly grin that meant she had a feeling something big was brewing. I shoved my phone in her hand and let her scroll through the photos. Her eyebrows shot up, then down. She set the phone down, poured herself a glass, and said calmly, "Well, now we know where your Italy money went. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" That single question lit a fire inside me. The old Eleanor would have wept, begged, maybe written a scathing letter no one would read. But this Eleanor felt different. Harder, colder, calculating. I looked Ruth straight in the eye and said, "I'm going to make them regret thinking they could play me for a fool." She raised her glass like a toast. That's the Eleanor I remember. So, I sent Daniel a short text, saw the photos. "We need to talk when you're back." His typing dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. I could almost hear his heartbeat from here. Good, let him sweat. But I wasn't done. That night, memories pulled me back 3 months earlier, back to when I'd been so giddy about finally booking Italy. I'd saved for years, clipping coupons, cutting corners, living modestly so I could finally step foot in Rome, Florence, and Tuscany. After Henry's death, that trip wasn't just travel, it was reclaiming my life. I bought a new camera, spread travel brochures across the table, and told myself that at 67, I could still have adventure. Daniel had seemed supportive at first, though Sophie's smile had been thin. She'd asked, "Isn't that a lot of money for just one person?" I brushed it off, too swept up in excitement to notice the way they exchanged glances. Then came the phone call. Daniel's voice, trembling. "Mom, Sophie owes dangerous people money. They came to our house. They threatened her. If we don't pay $13,000 by Friday, they'll hurt her." I'd felt my blood run cold. My son in tears, begging for help, terrified for his wife's life. I didn't hesitate. I wired them my Italy fund. He promised they'd pay me back. I canceled my trip, telling myself there'd be other chances. I clung to that story even when Ruth raised doubts. But then Daniel and Sophie vanished for 2 weeks. No calls, no updates. When I finally tracked down Daniel's assistant at work, she told me he'd taken a once-in-a-lifetime vacation. My stomach turned. That's when I found Sophie's Facebook photos of the cruise paid for with my savings. And the rage inside me grew sharper, colder, more focused. They thought they'd fooled me, that I'd just swallow the betrayal. They had no idea what storm was about to break over their perfect little vacation, because the next discovery would push me past heartbreak into something far darker, revenge. The cruise photos had already gutted me, but what came next nearly destroyed me. A few days later, my emergency credit card bill arrived. I almost tossed it in the trash unopened. It was a card I rarely used, usually with a zero balance. But something made me rip the envelope open. Maybe instinct, maybe fate. The balance, nearly $5,000. My breath caught in my throat. The charges? Airline tickets to Miami. travel insurance, shore excursion packages in Santorini, ship Wi-Fi. Every expense dated the week before. Daniel had called me sobbing about Sophie's gambling debts. They hadn't just stolen my Italy fund. They'd stolen my card information and used it to upgrade their dream cruise. The timeline made my stomach churn. The gambling story hadn't been a desperate plea, it was a cover, a script. I called the credit card company with shaking hands. They told me every purchase was made with the correct security code and zip code. Someone with full access to my information. Who had that access? Daniel. He'd sat with me after Henry died, helping me set up my online accounts, writing down my passwords, swearing it was for emergencies. The realization hit like a blade. My own son had been planning this for months. He hadn't just taken my money, he'd betrayed every ounce of trust I had left. I called Ruth immediately. Within minutes, she was at my kitchen table, scanning the statements with her sharp teacher's eyes. "That son of a," she muttered, slamming the papers down. "Eleanor, this isn't carelessness, this is calculated theft." I nodded, my fury crystallizing into something hard and unshakable. "I'm going to make them pay," I said, "but I need to be smart. No tears, no begging. They'll never see me coming." Together, we pieced together their cruise itinerary. 12 days at sea, ending in Miami. A hotel for one night. Back home Sunday evening. They'd walk through that door tanned, smiling, smug, and they'd have no clue I'd spent the last 2 weeks building a case strong enough to bury them. Sunday evening arrived. Ruth sat beside me in my living room, coffee in hand, both of us staring out the window like hunters waiting for prey. At 7:15, Daniel's car pulled into their driveway. I could see them laughing, unloading luggage, glowing from stolen sunshine. I waited 30 minutes, long enough for them to believe they'd gotten away with it. Then I crossed the street and rang their bell. Daniel opened the door, his smile slipping into shock. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to welcome you home," I said smoothly. "I've been so worried about Sophie after those terrifying debt collectors." Confusion flickered across his face before he remembered the lie. "She's doing much better," he said stiffly. The time away helped. Sophie appeared behind him, sun-kissed and smug. "Eleanor?" "What a surprise. You didn't have to check on us." "Oh, but I did." I stepped inside uninvited. "I brought photos you might enjoy." I pulled out my phone and scrolled through screenshots of their cruise pictures. Sophie's smile froze. Daniel's face drained of color. Silence filled the room. "I was relieved to see Sophie so safe and happy," I said sweetly, "especially since I paid to keep her alive." Daniel opened his mouth, but I raised my hand. "Wait, there's more." I pulled out the printed credit card statements. "These are charges made with my card airline tickets, excursions, Wi-Fi booked before you begged me for money. Care to explain?" Daniel collapsed onto the couch. Sophie's hands trembled, though she tried to mask it. "Eleanor, it's not what it looks like," Daniel muttered. "Oh, really? Because it looks exactly like fraud," Sophie finally snapped. "You don't understand. We needed this. Our marriage was falling apart. We thought a trip might save us." "So you decided I should fund your therapy cruise?" My voice dripped acid. "We were going to pay you back," Daniel said quickly. "We just needed time." "With what money?" "You're maxed out, behind on every bill you have." I shook my head, bitter laughter bubbling out. Then Sophie's mask shattered completely. "You act like we're criminals," she spat. "But you're the one hoarding money while your family struggles. You're sitting on savings you'll never spend, living in that big, empty house, wasting away. At least we use the money to create memories." Her words punched the air out of me. Hoarding? I'd worked 40 years as a teacher, living frugally so I could finally enjoy retirement. And she dared call that hoarding. "And what memories did I get?" I asked quietly. "The memory of canceling my dream trip because my son sobbed into the phone about his wife's gambling debts? The memory of betrayal?" Sophie's lip curled. "You were never going to Italy anyway. You just wanted us to feel guilty for not helping you." Admit it, Eleanor, you've been manipulating Daniel for years, dropping hints about your bills, your loneliness, your roof repairs, making him feel like he owes you. My jaw tightened. Those were private conversations between me and Daniel, twisted into poison. I turned to my son. You told her those things? He looked ashamed. She's my wife. We talk about everything. Sophie pounced. Exactly. You guilt-tripped him into feeling responsible for your life. So when we took some money early, it was like solving your problem and ours. You'd get to Italy eventually. We'd save our marriage now? My stomach turned cold. An advance on my death? Sophie's eyes glittered with something unhinged. Yes, you're 67. Realistically, how much time do you have left? Your money will be ours eventually. We just sped things up. The room went dead silent. Daniel went pale as a ghost, staring at his wife like he didn't recognize her. I felt something inside me snap into place. Not sorrow. Not even rage. Something colder. Steadier. They thought my life's work was just an ATM waiting to spit cash when I died. They thought my dreams were disposable, my money already theirs. That night, I revealed my hand. I told them about the evidence file I'd built. Every screenshot, every charge, every lie documented. I told them about the promissory note drafted by Ruth's lawyer nephew. $17,437 owed back to me within 2 years, with interest. Miss one payment, and I'd press charges, fraud, elder abuse, theft by deception. Daniel read the contract, his face gray. Sophie seethed, spitting words about how I was vindictive, about how I was destroying their quality of life. But I wasn't finished. Because Sophie had revealed something even more dangerous, that she was counting on my death for her payday, and I had already taken steps to make sure that payday would never come. Sophie's rant about accelerating my death was the last nail in her coffin. I set down the promissory note and slid a new document across the table. "What's this?" Daniel asked, voice tight. "My will," I said, calm as ice. "Revised this morning." Sophie snatched it up, scanning frantically. The longer she read, the tighter her jaw locked. You left almost everything to charity? To some education trust?" "Not charity," I corrected. "Your children's education. Any grandchildren I have will have their college paid for. Daniel will receive a modest inheritance, $50,000, enough to be meaningful. Enough to honor him as my son. But the rest? Nearly $400,000 gone from your reach." Sophie's face twisted with fury. "You can't do this," she snapped. "We're your family. Who do you think is going to take care of you when you're old and sick?" I leaned forward, my voice low but sharp enough to cut glass. "Based on your performance so far, certainly not you. You've already shown me how you take care of me by stealing my savings, lying about threats, and celebrating on Instagram while I sat alone, terrified. I'll take my chances with professionals, thank you very much." Daniel looked like a man unraveling. His eyes darted between Sophie and me, the realization dawning that he'd chained himself to a woman who saw his own mother as a walking inheritance. "You planned all of this," he whispered to Sophie. "The lies, the gambling story, even stealing her credit card information." Sophie's mask cracked. "Don't act like you're innocent. You wanted the cruise too. You knew your mom wouldn't give us money for something so frivolous. You went along with it." Daniel slumped back, defeated, and in that moment I saw it clearly. He was guilty, yes, but he was also her puppet. Sophie had pulled the strings, but he'd chosen to dance. I gathered my papers, speaking with finality. "Here are your options. Sign the promissory note and repay every dollar with interest over 2 years, or I file criminal charges tomorrow. Fraud. Theft, elder abuse. It won't just ruin your finances, it will ruin your lives. Daniel, you'll lose your job. Sophie, good luck finding a new husband when the world knows what you did." Sophie's eyes burned with venom. "You're vindictive, Eleanor. You're punishing us for being honest about the inheritance." "No," I said, "I'm protecting myself. I worked 40 years for that money. You won't touch another cent." And now you'll live every day remembering that you almost went to prison for stealing from me." The silence was suffocating. Finally, Daniel reached for the pen. His hand trembled as he signed the promissory note. Sophie glared at him, but she signed too, her signature angry slashes across the paper. "Good," I said, tucking the contract neatly into my folder. "You'll make the first payment in 30 days. Miss it, and the police will be at your door." I stood, calm and unshakable. Daniel followed me to the door. His voice cracked as he said, "Mom, is there any way we can fix this?" I looked at him, really looked. My son. My little boy who used to bring me dandelions. My grown man who had stolen my dreams to fund his wife's fantasies. "That depends," I said, "on whether you prove you're the man I raised you to be or the one you became when you married her." And then I walked out. Ruth was waiting in my kitchen, a bottle of wine already open. "So?" she asked. "They signed," I said, "and the will is rewritten. Their children will get educations, not stolen vacations." Sophie showed her true colors. Daniel finally saw them. "And me?" "I got my power back." Ruth raised her glass. "To consequences." "To consequences," I echoed, clinking mine against hers. 3 months later, I was sipping Chianti on a terrace in Tuscany, the golden hills rolling beneath the sunset. I'd funded the trip with the first payment Daniel and Sophie had sent me, poetic justice at its finest. My phone buzzed, a text from Daniel. "Mom, I signed the divorce papers today. I'm sorry for everything. Maybe when I finish paying you back, we can try again." I typed back, "Maybe we can enjoy your fresh start." Some bridges can't be rebuilt, but some men can choose to become better. The waiter set down a plate of handmade pasta, fragrant with truffle. I twirled a forkful, savoring every bite. The food, the view, the freedom, it was everything I dreamed of. And I realized something important. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's weakness. I wasn't weak anymore. The sunset over Tuscany was worth the wait. And it was mine, finally mine. Not stolen, not manipulated, not borrowed from my own future. Paid for by the very people who tried to take it from me. I raised my glass to the horizon, whispering a toast to Henry, to myself, and to every woman who's ever been told she's too old to fight back. "Some things," I said softly, "are worth the wait." And if you've made it this far, don't forget subscribe. Share this story and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? Because sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's living beautifully in the ruins of someone else's betrayal.